Morgoth, real name Milkur, is one of the Ainu, a product of the will of the One, Iluvada, before the creation of all things. Of all the Ainu, Mirko was given the greatest power, and was the most powerful being under Iluvada, with his brother Manwë being slightly behind him. However, Mirko fell. In the great music of Ainu, he repeatedly stirred up discord and defied Iluvada's will. While the multitude of Veles labored hard in Arda, he blatantly waged war, causing Arda to suffer heavily. He even dispersed his power into Arda, defiling every blade of grass and tree in the world. Later, he stole the elven diamonds and was at odds with the Noldor as a result. Eventually, he was defeated in the Battle of Wrath, bound in chains by Vila and thrown into the realm of the void, yet the evil he created continues to plague the world. According to the prophecy, Morgoth will eventually be freed from his bonds and slain for good in the Armageddon. As the Ainu chorused, Mirko added his distinctive thoughts to the song. His song clashes with Iluvada's theme and disturbs the thoughts of the Ainu around him, even causing them to sing along with him. For a time, Iluvada's theme and the dissonant voice were at odds with each other. However, Iluvada rose at this point. She smiled and delivered a new theme. Most of the Ainu joined in with it, however Mirko's dissonant voice whistled high. Eventually, many of the Ainu's songs stopped in consternation, and Mirko once again took over. Thus, Iluvada delivered a third theme, which was sweeter and more melodious than its predecessor, yet could not be silenced. When Mirko's music attempted to drown it out, it was only absorbed and blended into its own solemn pattern. Eventually, Iluvada rose for the third time, and the great movement came to an abrupt end after a surge of far-reaching, deep, and sharp harmonies. Iluvada blatantly rebuked Mirko in front of the Ainu, and said, "The source of all the themes is me, and no one can change the movement without my consent." Mirko was filled with shame, and he was furious, but he did not dare to disobey Iluvada. When Iluvada showed the Ainu the creations of their music, Mirko asked to be admitted to Arda, pretending that he wished to obey Iluvada's will, to create and to guide her children. However, Mirko's heart desired nothing more than to subjugate himself to Alda and all of its creations, especially Iluvada's children. He was eventually allowed to enter Aya with Vila. Upon his arrival, he instantly demonstrated his greed. He said to the other Veles, "This will be my kingdom, and I will claim it for myself." However, his brother Manwë, who was of the same origin as him, recruited many Ainu to help him guard against Mirko's destructive actions. The Mirko retreated, and Iaa found temporary peace. Later the Mirko took form, huge and terrifying, and attacked Vira's work. This was the first battle between Vila and the Mirko, and although the Mirko succeeded in destroying much of the Vila's work, a powerful Ainu named Tokus came from Aya to help and defeated the Mirko. The Veles settled in Almarin after this and created two giant lamps, Elohim and Orshel. Mirko managed to attract some Maya to his side at this time. By placing spies among the Velkur, he was able to see what the Velkur were doing and wait for the right moment. As the Veles held a feast to celebrate, Mirko gathered his followers. Tokus and Nessa were married in the middle of the feast, and after he fell asleep, Mirko began his raid. He led his army across the Wall of Night and back again to Arda, to the north of Mid-Continent, without Vila ever discovering his whereabouts. He dug into the earth and built a fortress called Utumno under the dark mountains, where the light of Elohim dimmed. The spring of Arda was poisoned, for cold evil flowed from there. Death and disease replaced the greenery. Eventually, the Vira were informed that Mirko had returned and began a search for his hiding place. However, convinced that his power was invincible, Mirko attacked first. He attacked the two giant lamps, and a torrent of flame and fierce water swept across the land. Since then, the symmetrical form of Arda has fallen apart. Mirko took advantage of the chaos to escape and hide in Utumno. Thus ended the spring of Arda. After the destruction of Almarin, the Vira went to a new continent across the sea, Amenland, and founded Valinor. They created a new source of light, the twin sacred trees, with which to illuminate the world. Some of the Velis were reluctant to abandon the Middle Continent, most notably Yavanna and Omu. And from time to time, Omu returned to Mid-Continent to hunt the horrible monsters of Mirko. Mirko is secretly gaining power in the north. He gathered his evil creations in one place and tried to breed even more hideous monsters. And his Myrian servants, the Infernals, joined him at this time. He built another fortress in the northwest of Mid-Continent, called Omban, and expected it to defend against attacks from Vila. He sent his most powerful servant, Sauron, there to oversee that fortress. In his wanderings, Mirko discovered the awakening of the elves, planted fear in their hearts, and killed and captured numerous elves. It is said that under the torture and corruption of the Mirko, they became orcs. The Velars similarly discovered the elves not long afterward. Out of fear that the elves were being corrupted by the Mirko, Manwë decided to do whatever it took to retake their hold on the Middle Continent. Vila's army poured out of the Amen continent, while the Mirko met their first attack in the northwest of the continent. The western armies won their first battle, and they surrounded Utumno, changing the shape of the land as countless battles took place at the gates of the fortress. In the end, Vera's army was victorious. They bound Milkur with the iron locks of Anganor, forged by Ali, and took him prisoner. He was imprisoned in the halls of Mandus and held there for 3 eons, silently planning his revenge. At the end of his imprisonment, Mirkur was once again brought under the throne of the Vera. He hid his thirst for vengeance and crouched by Manwë's throne, pleading for forgiveness. Manwë forgave him, but Omu and Torkas were not fooled by him. The Velera would not allow him to go out of their sight, nor would they allow him to move out of their watch but within the gates of Vilma. Soon he began to try to influence the elves, especially Noldo. For the Vanya elves were suspicious of him, and he considered the Teleri elves too weak to be the tools of his plot. Fëanor, who had perfected his skills, created elven diamonds. Mirkur coveted them, and his desire to destroy the friendship between Vila and the elves became more and more urgent. He took his time, spreading vicious rumors, both true and false, among the Noldor. He mentioned the existence of humans to the elves and falsely claimed that Manwë had placed them under house arrest in order for the humans to take over the Middle Continent. Thus the desire for a wider frontier rose in Fëanor's heart, and many of the Noldor began to believe the evil words. Fenway's first and second sons fell out, and Fëanor was banished to Verminose. At this time Mirko's plans were thus revealed, and he fled at once. Milkur disappeared for a time, but one day he suddenly went to Fëanor's house in Verminose and, under the pretense of speaking from the bottom of his heart, seduced him to leave Vila, which had wronged him. Fëanor was shaken by this, but Mirkur brought up the elven diamonds and aroused Fëanor's anger. The High Prince of Noldor saw through his greed for the elven diamonds and cursed and rejected him. Mirko left filled with resentment and traveled to Avashah, where shadows loomed. There coiled Ugoliant, a dark deity who took the form of a spider. She had been one of Mirko's henchmen, but broke away from his control after his defeat. Mirko vowed to pay her handsomely, and convinced Ugoliant to do so. Ugoliant wove a black cloak woven of shadows and covered herself and Mirko. They climbed the peaks of Halmentor at the time of Vila's celebration, and there entered the plains of Valinor. Mirko struck the twin trees hard with her lance, and Ugoliant drew all their sap. She drank the entire well of Varda dry, and with Mirko fled northward toward Verminose. There, Mirko killed Fenway, king of Noldor, and took all of Fëanor's jewels, including the elvish diamond. And then he crossed the Straits of Herculax and returned once more to the Middle Continent. Fëanor cursed him in his grief and anger, calling him Morgoth, the Dark Lord. From then on, he was known only by that name, Eldar. After escaping back to the Middle Continent, Ugoliant began to claim Fëanor's jewels. She forced Morgoth to hand over the jewels he was carrying and swallowed them one by one. However, Morgoth refused to show her the elven jewels. The spider had swollen to great size and horror, while Morgoth had exhausted his strength and grown weak. Immediately, Ugoliant flipped out and entangled him in a giant web. Morgoth then let out a loud scream that reached deep into the earth, and the inferno lurking under the ruins of Omban rushed to save him and drove off Ugoliant. From there, Morgoth managed to return to Beleriand. Morgoth rebuilt his fortress there and began corrupting and attacking those elves who remained in Beleriand. The elves of Sindar, led by Elohimgar, resided in the hidden kingdom of Doriath. The elves led by Churden resided in Fallas, and Nandor settled in Osiriand. Morgoth waged war against Sinjar, who besieged Doriath and severed the link between Sinjar and Churden. However, Cygnus managed to call on Denethor for help, and Nando joined forces with Sindar to fight Orc between the Aros and Gelian rivers. With both armies attacking, Morgoth's Orc legions were eventually defeated. They were further intercepted and defeated by the Naogs in their flight. The Orcs attacking Chilton, on the other hand, were victorious. They forced Teleri to the sea. The Noldor led by Fëanor set up camp in Mithrin, yet Morgoth soon attacked, expecting to repel them before they managed to settle down and threaten him enough. Yet the gleam from the Amen still shone in their eyes, and they were strong and agile, and their hearts were filled with fury, and their long swords were sharp and terrible. Orc retreated before them, defeated as a leaf in the wind. Fëanor pursued them as far as the gates of Sangolothium and Omban. Morgoth then sent out an army of Infernals, and Fëanor, who had fallen into the enemy camp alone, was severely wounded in their siege, and perished as a result. Though Morgoth lost the lands of Beleriand outside of Eredhelmgrim, he rejoiced in Fëanor's death. The high expectation of the kingdom of Finn with his sons, and the sons of Finarfin, arrived at the beginning of the First Age. They rang the gates of Omban, but did not venture forth. The elves also began to establish their kingdom at the same time, and Morgoth waited 60 years before his second assault. That was both the Battle of Daedra Aglareb, the Battle of Glory, named for the great victory of the elves. The high hopes of the Finn kingdom and the sons of Fëanor established the siege of Omban thereafter, thus confining Morgoth within his fortress. Morgoth lay dormant for a long time in the midst of defeat, until the year 455 of the First Age. On a moonless night in winter, Morgoth suddenly attacked, rivers of flame tilting out of Sangolothium and poisonous smoke rising from the Iron Mountains. Noldor's alliance with Sindar and the Edenites was unprepared for the attack, and as a result had no time to organize a defense force. In the first few days they suffered heavy casualties. Dorthonion, the northern part of Cyrene, and the Maglar exit were all captured. However, the Wessex Mountains, Shimrin, and Heathlum did not fall. The High King of Noldor, Finn, had high hopes of being cut off from his kin, and thus was unable to give them help. When he learned of the heavy losses brought about by this war, anger and despair filled his heart. He challenged Morgoth alone, denouncing him as a coward and a slave lord, and Morgoth eventually met the challenge himself. He strides out, his footsteps sound like thunder, he is wearing black armor, head wearing iron crown, holding a black shield and heavy hammer gerund, and high hopes with high expectations of the state of Finland to start a dangerous battle. Every time the Inferno hammer smashed down, it made a big pit on the ground, and flames rose up from it. However, Fingolf's high hopes were agile and dodged in one leap. The Elf King cut 7 wounds on Morgoth's body, and he let out a howl of pain. However, Fingold's high expectations was only mortal, and he began to tire, and was overwhelmed by Morgoth's huge shield. 3 times he fell to the ground and 3 times he rose again, his shield broken and his crown damaged. Eventually, he fell to the ground and Morgoth stretched out his left foot and stomped on his neck while he struck a dying blow, slashing Ringr into Morgoth's foot in his last moments before he died, and black blood spurted out and filled the crater that Gerend had smashed. Morgoth was going to throw the body of Finn's high hopes to the wolves. However, the giant eagle Thorndr flew in at that moment, scratched Morgoth's face and took away the king's remains. Morgoth could only walk with a limp from then on, and the pain of his wounds could not be healed. Byrn of House Br, son of Barahir, fell in love with Lucian, daughter of Sing. However, Sinjar tried his best to prevent their marriage and demanded that Byrn bring back an elven diamond for him as a bride price. After all the hardships, they walk to the throne of Morgoth. He sees Lucian's beauty, evil thoughts rise in his heart, and allows her to dance before him. Lucian sings a song and manages to put him into a coma. While he was unconscious, Beren took an elfin diamond from his iron crown. In the year 471 of the First Age, Mislos united the Naogs, Edenites, and Noldor in an alliance. They launched a counteroffensive against Morgoth, expecting to purge his forces from Silmarillion. However, Morgoth planted spies among them and gained prior knowledge of their movements. The Eastcomers betrayed the elves when the Great War came, succeeding in delaying the march of the Sons of Fëanor and ultimately leading to the defeat of the alliance. Numerous leaders among the elves, humans, and dwarves were killed in the battle. The battle was named Nirnath Anodiad, the Battle of the Endless Tears. Morgoth was victorious on nearly all fronts, razing Hithlum and Falas to the ground and breaking the alliance of Mislos. In 495 of the First Age, he captured the Nausic's nation of Slond again. However, Turgon, king of Gondolin, managed to survive and return to the Hidden Kingdom. All other survivors of this war fled to the Baral Island and the Syrian estuary. Morgoth captured Hurin in the Nirnath Arnoldiad and imprisoned him on the heights of Sangolothium, watching over his family members who had been cursed by Morgoth. Hurin's children, Thulin and Nenor, were deeply doomed by Morgoth's curse and eventually died. After their deaths, Morgoth freed Hurin. Maeglin, a traitor among the elves, revealed the location of Gondolin to Morgoth. He unleashed an army that eventually sacked the Hidden Kingdom. Turgon, the supreme king of Noldor and the high heir of the Kingdom of Fën, died in the Battle of the Fall of Gondolin. Morgoth achieved the final victory in the north. However, Hooksmorg, the right-hand man under Morgoth, was cut down in a fight to the death by Exilion, the lord of the Surge clan. Tuor and Eldar led a small group of survivors, along with their son Agerendil, and managed to escape from the city through a secret passage. A few years later, Agerendil set sail for Valinor, seeking Vila's forgiveness. Manwë answered his plea, and Vila's army poured out across Barad-dûr. Morgoth fought hard for some time in this battle, but was also eventually defeated. His evil dragons were repulsed by giant eagles, and the black dragon Ankra was just shot down by Agerendil, who had come in a bunkalon. Captured in his fortress, Morgoth was struck face down to the ground and the elvish diamond removed from his crown while he was once again bound with Anganor and thrown into the realm of emptiness. Though he has been defeated, his evil still remains within the boundaries of Arda, and his minions, the fallen Maya Solon, will carry on his evil will. Morgoth will remain imprisoned in the realm of the void and will never be able to return while Vila remains in control of Arda. However, according to Manda's second prophecy, he will return again and wreak havoc. A war will be waged between him and Vila, named Daedra Dagoras. He will eventually be killed by Turin, the human he had cursed. While some versions claim that Ymli will kill Morgoth for his love of Arion, not Turin.